Hey, Wyatt's from Greensboro, North Carolina.
Welcome to episode 7 of Touring America. Today we're going to talk about gloves, in particular Lee Parks Deer Tours and Deer Sports gloves. Before we get into that, I'm going to give you a little bit of history and talk about a couple other kinds of gloves that I've used in the past, what I didn't like about them, and how I ended up with the Lee Parks products for my own use over about the past 8 years. Then we're going to dive in deep, talk about the construction, the comfort, the different features of the gloves, look at a few different models, and then kind of wrap it all up by talking about the pricing and the value that they provide. So let's jump right in. Here we go. So here we are back on episode 7 today, talking about the gloves, and in particular Lee Parks Deer Tours and Deer Sports gloves. And before we want to get totally into looking at these gloves, here they are, brand new, right out of the packaging. I'm not going to do an unboxing because they just ship in a plain yellow envelope. I'm going to kind of go over a little bit of my glove history, kind of what I've worn over the years, what's worked, and kind of some different things that I've liked and not liked. These are not my gloves. These are my wife's gloves, a pair of gloves that she's had for quite a while, and they are similar to a pair of gloves that I had a long time ago, 8-10 years ago. And they are kind of your typical Chinese gloves, actually Pakistan, right here, made in Pakistan on the tag. And they've got a little bit of a reinforced palm, Velcro wrist closure, some type of a fabric spandexy finger sides, right, and the ventilated back. And they're cheapos. The ones I had a circle cut out, kind of like the driving gloves that you see kind of in the old 60s and 70s movies, right? And I actually was wearing those gloves during my first motorcycle accident that I had on my Shadow 1100. Pickup truck ran me off the road with my wife sitting on the back, and I ended up going down on my hands, and it was a relatively slow speed when I went down. I don't know exactly, but probably under 10 miles an hour by the time I finally went down. I thought I was gonna hold it together, but I didn't. And when I hit the ground with my palms, the entire middle section of the hands just tore out of the gloves. They probably did save my hands, but they did not last at all. They rolled right up, just like a pair of nylons rolling down a lady's leg. The palms just ripped right up here across the bridge of the hand and rolled right up and ended up with a big hole. Like I said, probably was better than nothing, but just barely. Don't waste your time on this cheap Chinese crap that you can find at the discount stores and online for $8 or $10. Not worth it. Made in Pakistan, made in China, pretty much all the same stuff. All right, so stay away from those. The next thing I've tried were gloves like this. Again, these are my wife's also, but these are a pair of field shear, 100% goat skin gloves with the hard armor in the back, across the knuckles, and pads on the fingers. These aren't too bad. Goat skin is pretty popular material on a lot of different kinds of gloves, sporting gloves in particular, where they don't do cowhide or the kangaroo hide, which is the top end. The goat skin actually is not too bad in terms of durability and comfort. You can break it in, does pretty nicely. My wife has worn these for several years. She says they're uncomfortable though. You put your hand in them and it's hard to see all the way down in there, I know on the camera, but on the insides of these hard knuckle plates, there's some padding, and if that pad doesn't sit right, there's some seams around that area and seams around the stitching that will rub on your fingers, and they're not real comfortable. Protection wise, I've never been down in a pair of gloves like this, but the thing that I constantly hear about is, what if these hard shells break during your accident? You actually impact those knuckles. What is that material made out of? Is it a carbon fiber? Is it a hard plastic? Is it a polycarbonate? Some of those materials will shatter upon impact on a hard surface and essentially turn the edges into razor blades. Is that going to cut through the liner of your glove and cut up the back of your hands? I said, I've not seen that personally, And I know a lot of gloves out there from very high name recognition brands use that system, so I'm not going to bash it, particularly if you're sport riding and you have a very high likelihood of going down. I think as long as you make sure that you've got adequate protection underneath that, you're going to be okay. But a very popular style of glove, and you've heard me talk about Field Shear before. I just love their stuff. For the dollar that you spend, really high value. I think these were $45 online when we bought them 6-7 years ago, and they continue to serve her very, very well. But now to what we really want to get into today, and those are the Lee Parks series of gloves. Got several pairs here. We'll kind of go over them, talk about where they're at in my personal kind of use case, what's great about them, what I like about them, and some of the things I don't like about them as well. So how I discovered these gloves was at one of the international motorcycle shows up at the Rosemont Convention Center, and they tour around a lot of the big cities over the winter and into the spring. And as I was walking the floor, I ran into a Lee Parks booth, and there's a lot of vendors there showing a lot of different pairs of gloves, and I was in the market for some gloves. It was actually in January, and I rode my bike up there. It was one of those abnormally warm winter days. I rode my 1100 Shadow up there and was shopping for a pair of gloves. And when you look at these gloves, they don't look like there's much to them. They actually kind of remind you of those military style work gloves that you see in the black and the yellow colors. But I started talking to the vendors, and in their display, they had a pair of gloves that had been down on a rider at over 100 miles an hour. And they were not, they did not go and wear through. They had abrasions on them, they were scuffed up, but at 100 miles an hour, the rider hit his hands on the pavement, and the palms were all scuffed up, but they did not wear through. At that point, I was sold. I'm not a sport rider, I'm not a racer, right? What I want is something that's comfortable most of the time, that's gonna protect my hands from that road rash if I go down. So I picked up my first pair then, and they were cheaper than they are now. I want to say I paid about 70 bucks, but I'm not exactly sure. It was in that range, 70, 75, somewhere around there. And the pair that I picked up are identical to this. And actually, I keep them in my bike to this day as a backup copy. But after the accident, they kind of got pushed around. I got bags of stuff still all over from when I collected my belongings out of that bike. And I can't find them, otherwise I'd show them to you. I said 8 or so years later, what I did is they wore through on both of the fingers. I've got short hands, and my tips of my fingers wear on the brake and clutch levers, and I did wear holes through both of the fingers, but that took 7 years for those to wear through. I gave them to my wife. She sewed them up, and I now use those for backup gloves. About a year ago, like I said, after those holes kind of finally wore in, I wanted to get a new pair, and I didn't even hesitate. I went right back to the Lee Parks Deer Tours. The Deer Tours gloves have the short cuff, right? They are the wrist height cuff. You put them on, Velcro closure, and that's all there is to it. Okay? That's the Deer Tours. The Deer Sports, which is what I just bought, okay, are the high cuff, right? The gauntlet style of glove. So when you put them on, they come way up high on your arm, right? They can go over your jacket, where these I typically wear under my cuff. They've got the same wrist closure, and there's actually a higher closure as well. So you can kind of gather up that gauntlet and make it tight around your jacket if you want, right? So right in there, pull that Velcro in, fits nice and tight around your wrist. So that's the difference. The Deer Sports have the long cuff, Deer Tours are the short cuff. They also have, and these are, let's talk about this. These are all made from deer skin. The gloves are complete deer skin. The palm pads and the double thickness on the back of the glove are made from elk hide. All right, so they're deer and elk hide gloves, super, super soft. Softest leather gloves I've ever felt. And that's one of the things that makes them so comfortable for touring. Right? I have them on all day, and they don't bother me a bit. There's no wear points on them at all. Right? And that applies to both the long and shorts, right? So they got the deer hide all around with the elk on the back, elk on the palm, right? Really nice. The other pair I've got is I've got a pair of the Deer Sports, okay, with what they call their Outlast PCI liner. And it's essentially, it's an insulated glove, and they're only insulated from the wrist forward. The gauntlet portion is not insulated to keep it thin, right? And what they've got is what they call PCI insulation. PCI stands for phase change, PC, phase change. And I don't completely understand how it works, but it's not thin slit, it's not polyester batting, right? It's this stuff called PCI. And what it does is it retains and transfers heat very efficiently, right? Particularly if you have heated grips on your bike, works really great. These can be 4-season. You can wear these down to about 20 degrees if you've got heated grips. Works really nice for that. Okay, so these are the ones that I wear when I go on my fall trips up north, places like that. Early spring riding. If you do a Toys for Tots ride, these would be perfect for something like that. If you buy them a size big, you can put heated liners underneath them as well, right? So I've got 3 pairs of their gloves. The Deer Tours plain, the Deer Sports plain, and the Deer Sports with the PCI lining. You can also get these with the PCI lining. I've never owned a pair. In the winter I want the taller gloves anyway, but you can get those with the lining. They also come in 2 different colors. They come in this black, and they also come in a yellow tan color. All my clothes are black, my jackets are black, so I ended up sticking with the black gloves. But let's talk about them a little bit. We already talked about the deer and the elk hide, right? Super comfortable, long wearing. The other thing is the threads that they use. You'll notice you've got the double stitching here around the backs and around the palm reinforcement. The thread that they use is a non-Kevlar thread. You'll see a lot of the glove manufacturers advertising that they use Kevlar thread. The problem with Kevlar thread in gloves is that it is actually too strong. The Kevlar will stay intact and actually pull through the leather if you put a lot of stretch on it, causing those seams to blow out in a high-speed crash, right? You want to have all your materials be about the same strength, right, so that you don't get that. So this thread is appropriate for the material that they chose. Non-Kevlar thread. It's not going to cut through the leather under stress. There are no palm seams. I'm going to turn this glove inside out so you can see what it's like on the inside. And I'm not going to turn all the fingers inside out, right? But this is the palm of the glove. Notice you've got no big seams sticking through here. You can see a little bit of thread from the reinforcement, right? But in the entire area where your hand is, you've got no 2 pieces of leather coming together, right? Like you would on a glove like this, right? Where you've got the thumb portion and it comes right down in the middle of your grip. You don't get that on the Lee Parks gloves. Makes it for a real smooth, real comfortable ride for long-term touring. The other thing they do is they iron the internal seams. So if you can see where there is a seam, and this is a seam that's kind of down below your thumb right here, you can see kind of how it's curled over, and this is a pretty new glove. After they sew it, they actually iron them flat, right? They put heat on that leather to make them lay flatter so you don't end up taking them off. And I'm sure you've had gloves like this where you end up with seam marks all over your hand. You don't get that with the Lee Parks gloves. They're really, really nice. We already talked about the reinforced palms, the reinforced knuckles, but also, again, look at where the stitching is, right? The back is entirely one piece. The fingers aren't individual. The seams are along the outside of the top of your hand, nothing on the inside. Right? When I turn it over, you don't see any seams except for right here across these 2 middle fingers. Everything else kind of comes along the back. Makes for a very comfortable fit. No hard inserts, so you don't have to. You don't have that problem of that polycarbonate or whatever it is, that hard material shattering and cutting your hand either. That also makes them a lot more comfortable to wear. You don't have that big hard knuckle rubbing against the back of your hand on a long day. I normally wear a medium glove. My Deer Sports PCI gloves are medium gloves, right? You can see them right there. They've got a medium, and they fit me pretty good. This is a heavier glove. We talked about it. It's got the insulation in it, but they are big enough so that when I put my heated liners on, I can slip them in here. It's tight. If I knew I was going to wear them strictly with heated liners, I might bump up to a large, but medium is my common size. I don't wear these heavy gloves in really hot weather, so they tend to stay pretty true to size. But the first pair that I had that I wore the holes in were also mediums in the deer tours. And what I found was over the years, through heat and sweat and riding them in the rain, that the deer skin did stretch. So when I replaced them with smalls. Right? And you can see these are small. All right, I bought down one size, and they fit great. The first time I put them on, they were really felt really nice and snug. I've only ridden these on 3 trips, and they stretched out and they fit me perfect, right? My fingers go right up to the tips. I don't have that flop, which I get a lot on the end because I have small hands, right? So I bought down a size both in my second set of deer tours and my deer sports, the non-PCI lined ones. They're both smalls. They're going to stretch over time, right? Leather does, particularly if you wear them in the heat. As I said, I've worn them in the rain. I actually haven't worn these yet at all on the bike. I'm still waiting to get these out. I just picked them up. They just came out of the package the other day. I said these have been on 3 trips, and I have ridden them in the rain. Like all leather, they will absorb water, right? One of the things that Lee Parks recommends is that you do not treat these gloves. Don't put a silicone spray or a snow seal or the Montana pitch blend that I talked about in my jacket video. Leave them raw. It helps them breathe. If you start putting all types of oils on them, they are going to stretch more and they're not going to breathe. They're going to get clogged up, and when you start to sweat, it's going to take much longer for them to dry out on the inside. So it'll just leave them just how they are. They do dry fairly quickly. Like I said, I have a second pair, which really was my first pair now, which I use as my backup, and I'll have these as well. So actually I'll have 3 summer pairs that I can wear if one gets wet. What I typically do is I've got a bungee net, and once the rain stops, I'll take the wet pair off, put them underneath my bungee net, put a dry pair on, and just ride around with the wet pair under the bungees, and usually within a couple hours, they dry out and I can go right back to them. They do dry out reasonably quickly. The first few times they get wet, you'll wring them out, and the dye will wring out of them, right? So they will dye your hands the first couple times they get wet, but that's not a big deal at all. So if you can't treat them, what do you do to maintain them? Well, you put them on, just like you were going for a ride. Put some mild laundry soap on them and run them under some water, and just like you're washing your hands, but have your gloves on, right? It'll take all the dirt right off of them. It'll open those pores back up on the natural leather. Rinse them off real good, make sure all the soap is out, and then just set them out to dry. Don't put them in the dryer. They will shrink in a dryer, right? Don't put them over direct heat, over your heating vent, or hit them with a hand dryer or anything like that. Just let them sit them out, room temperature, and they'll dry up real nice, and they'll give you a really long life. So why did I replace mine? These are the pair that I had on when I was in the accident on my K1600. And we talked about already, I broke this finger. I've got the splint off now. And you'll notice the back of this glove has got some scuff marks on it. This one probably wore about halfway through. I've also got some knockaround marks on the back of my right knuckle. When I wake up in the morning, the sand is still stiff, so there's still some bruising in there, even 3.5 weeks later. Coming back to the left glove, up on the backs of these fingers, there's some wear. You flip them over, right? My palms came out pretty good. You see I got a little bit on the tip of that one that's worn, a little bit on the little finger, right? And that was all in really good shape before the accident. So there is some wear on the glove. Could I keep wearing them? Yeah. And I'm going to keep these. These are probably going to become my backup pair now, right? And I'm going to move to the deer tours as my primary set, right? Once you're in an accident with your gear, it's just not worth it. They've done their job, right? They've served their purpose. The money you spent on them was well spent. They protected your hide, your head, whatever it is, right? and it's time to give them a break and get something else that you know will protect you. Why did I go back to Lee Tours, to Lee Parks? Because they protected me when it counted, right? And they're comfortable. So these are going to become my main gloves. And why did I go to the long instead of the short? Well, in that Vanson jacket review that I showed you in the last episode, when I zip those cuffs down, they kind of bind up funny with the Velcro here. And I kind of get a little wrist jam going on, and it really was not super comfortable. So what I want to do is wear these over the top. I'll put my jacket on first, put those gauntlets on, and they'll come up over the top of those jacket arms. That's going to be a lot more comfortable. I've tried that out. What do these things cost? Well, it depends, right? All depends. So starting at the cheaper end, right? The cheap is not the right word. The less expensive end, right, are the Deer Tours. The short cuff, no insulation models. Deer Tour glove, $95. Current price on the Lee Parks website. There's a couple other places that sell them, but essentially everybody sells them at list price. It's only 2 or 3 places that I found that sell them. So you're going to pay $95. I know there's a lot of other gloves out there. You can go to Revzilla or any of the other motorcycle kind of superstores online and get the armored style gloves, with Gore-Tex lining, carbon fiber, kangaroo skin, whatever, right? And some are less expensive, some are more expensive. But again, what is the purpose of your glove? What is your riding style? If you're a tourer, whether it's Harley Davidson or a Metric Cruiser or a Goldwing or a Sport Tour, these are really great, okay? If you're not anticipating going down hard at 150 miles an hour, these will get the job done for you. So these, $95. Deer Sports. Same glove, gauntlet style cuff, $135. All right, so $40 more gets you the gauntlet style cuffs on them. We already talked about that. All right, we said these are the smalls. And I will notice that these have just a little bit longer fingers than my Deer Tours did, but they are all hand sewn, so you're going to get a little bit of variation. All right. Zip them up. Velcro that down, right? Nice tight fit. Deer Sports PCI, right? Phase change technology for the insulation on those. Without heated grips, you can wear them down to about 40 degrees. Even colder if you've got heated grips or heated liners. These are $205, right? Again, you start getting into that upper dollar price point, comparable with some other gloves. Shop it around. You can also get the Deer Tours with the PCI insulated. Like I said, I never had those. Those are $150. Right? So if you want the short cuff with the insulation, $150. So overall, kind of what's kind of the tail of the tank here, right? When you put them on the bike, is it worth the money? Is it not worth the money? Well, let's talk about it. What are the upsides? Number one, comfort, right? The suppleness of this deer hide, guys, I cannot stress enough how comfortable this stuff is to wear. No liner on the inside. There doesn't need to be because it's even so soft on the inside, right? Great against your skin. The seams are nice and soft, super, super comfortable. Durability speaks for itself, right? Had these on 57 miles per hour, went down, hit the backs of my hands, I think, right? Protected me when I needed them, right? And like I said, I've seen the displays. Super, super durable gloves, right? So that's another positive. The third positive, which is huge in my book, that I haven't talked about so far, is they're made in the USA. Right here in the United States, American quality. They're not coming from Pakistan or China or Indonesia or India or wherever people have their goat skin gloves made, right? Keep the money in the US, get a quality product, support a small businessman. Finally, the PCI phase change lining. We talked about how that works, right? And in my experience, it works great. Last fall, I did a ride up into Upper New York, the Appalachians, up in the mountains there, and it was right around 40 degrees in the mornings and in the evenings. And I had these on, turned my heated grips on, and I was super, super comfortable. My fingers never got cold, right? I said, I don't know what goes into the PCI technology, but whatever they're doing, it's right. What's bad about them? Well, the negatives to the gloves is they are a little bit on the pricey side. You can definitely get cheaper gloves out there, right? We talked about it. 95 bucks for the Deer Tours, 135 for the Deer Sports without the insulation, 150 and 205 with the insulation depending on the cut you get. So they are a little bit pricey. No hard armor, right? If you are a hardcore sport bike rider, these probably are not the gloves that you want, at least not when you're out on the track. For dueling around town, you know, running to your buddy's house, doing some bar hopping, they're probably fine, right? But if you're going to go do some hard riding, these might not be the gloves that you want. They don't have a whole lot of armor on them from on the back of the fingers, across the back of the hand. They don't have any of the hard puck sliders on them that you see on the heels of some other gloves. Waterproof. They're not a waterproof glove. There's a lot of them out there now that are Gore-Tex or some other water repellent material. If that's an important feature, these aren't the gloves for you. I have a separate set of gloves that if it's going to be cold and wet, I'll put those on. And maybe I'll do a review on those later. There's some other field shear gloves that I've got, right? But if even in the summer, if it rains, I'll keep these gloves on. Like I said, they dry out quick. I'll swap to another pair and I'll be good to go. But they are not waterproof, and nor should you put waterproofing types of coatings on them. We talked about that. Finally, it is a touring glove, all right? It's made for touring, nothing else, right? You don't want to take a product that's designed for one use and use it in a way that it's really not suited for, right? So make sure that that is your use case on these gloves. So 3 different models. Is it worth it? I'm kind of the buy once, cry once mentality on gear that's going to save my life, right? Get good helmets, get good jackets, pants, and especially good gloves. And I make my living during the day as an IT guy. I'm a keyboard jockey. I need those hands to work all the time. Think about it, what it would be like to live without your hands, and then decide how much it's worth for you to spend on a quality glove to protect your hands. I think the value is very good. I wouldn't give it an excellent because they are a little bit high on the price side, but I'd give it a very good value on these gloves. If you have any questions, make sure you ask them below. Subscribe to the channel. Trying to drive up membership, and make sure you tell your buddies. If they're into touring, we're going to talk about it here. Thanks a lot.
Down the street, will you take me to